So we've got a lot of different tires in the Potenza family. Everything from the Potenza Sport AS, which is our all-season tire for everybody that has a sports car, something they want to drive year-round. Potenza Sport, a little sportier, summer tire, people who like to do back road driving. The RE-71RS lives at the top of that echelon. It's really all about grassroots competition.
So with it being kind of that pinnacle for competition and for the grassroots competitor, is it replacing something that's kind of coming in and taking over?
Yeah, so we had the Potenza RE-71R for a number of years, but technology moves on, tires move on, people move on, and so we needed a replacement. And so the RS is that replacement. Launched in Japan originally in 2020. We recently brought it over last year to kind of fill that spot at the top of the grassroots competition part of the portfolio. So the 71R was a complete kitchen sink. We're going to throw every technology at it. It had some really race-focused construction features. The compound was like a motorcycle-derived compound, very, very specialized. The RS is able to achieve its performance with more accessible technology, and it just shows that kind of continuous progression. The thing that most people are going to notice, though, is the tread pattern. So with the 71R, we had the directional tread pattern, which is really great. You could really optimize the tire for braking and acceleration, two things that the R was really, really good at. For cornering, though, moving to an asymmetric pattern really is advantageous because it gives you this really large outside shoulder block that is able to handle all of that cornering load. And so when you look at testing or lap times, you'll really see that the RS makes a lot of its time in corners with that maximum G-force. And honestly, one of the other advantages of it is when you go to a track day, right, you run NCM, this specific tire, the left front, gets really, really beat up because there's a lot of right-hand corners. And what you can do is, as a track person, you can change the tires at the track yourself, rotate them around. You don't have to demount them and flip them. And so it's a pretty big advantage. So
yeah, you talked about drivability, and I feel there are tires that are obviously extremely fast and very competitive when we're talking about grassroots autocross or time trial driving, but they drive kind of strange. Right. And I think a lot of it is when it comes to what tire is your favorite, your go-to. It not only is performance-based in that it can win the lap time, but it can also do exactly what you expect. So there's drivability and the performance, and this tire has, in my experience so far, extremely high drivability because of that. When you ask it to do something, it does what you expect, and it does it really well.
As a driver, what are the top things you look for in a tire?
We're at NCM Motorsports Park. It's one of my top 5 tracks in the US that I've ever driven, one of my favorites. And part of it is the variety that it offers. We have low speed corners, we have transitional elements, we have really high speed sweepers. So I need everything. I really want the tire to work in all of those environments. So if the tire is giving me all of that, if it gives me confidence in the high speed, but it gives me good drive off the corner in low speed corners, gives me good braking for the longer braking zones, we have all of that here. So I haven't driven my car on this track. I haven't driven this tire on this track, and I can't wait to feel if it's going to give me everything that I need.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been in a lot of cars around this track with you, and I'm very excited to ride in your personal car on these tires here, see what you think.
Me too. Let's do it. First couple corners of NCM, and we'll give the car a little bit to come to us, but it's one of the awesome transitional elements that we get down into one of the heaviest braking zones. So again, talking about the tire needing to kind of multitask, it needs to be able to give us everything from low speed grip, braking grip, acceleration. I think a lot of people don't necessarily consider the difference between lateral load and longitudinal grip when it comes to tires, and this track really demands both because you need the stopping and acceleration force longitudinally, but you also need that grip side to side for the transitions and for the longer corners.
Right.
What's the difference between creating good longitudinal grip versus good lateral grip?
So that comes back to a lot of the pattern changes that we talked about before. The directionality of the pattern, really the geometry of the pattern, allows you to optimize it for different things. So directional patterns can typically be tuned really nicely for fore, aft, so acceleration and braking. asymmetric patterns really are where you get the opportunity to have those like big outside shoulder blocks and really tune it for cornering. But when you're doing either one of them, you can't do it so much that you compromise the ability to also generate the other one. So that's where a lot of the science comes in terms of modeling the tread patterns and figuring out how they work with the compounds, and then also like how the tire deflects under load has a huge contribution. Because the tread pattern statically doesn't really mean anything. It has to be like, what does it look like fully loaded?
I've never actually thought of that before. What does the tire look like when it's fully compressed? Because I bet it ends up being a really flat contact patch, right?
The contact patch looks like a triangle. So the outside shoulder is really heavily loaded and the inside is a lot less loaded, but you can do things to optimize that so that you get less triangle and more contact area. And the other thing too is that it's not just the shape, but the individual pressure within the shape makes a big difference. So like, am I totally overloading the very outside of the shoulder, or am I able to evenly distribute that pressure? That's what delivers a lot of the grip characteristics.
So this is one of the hardest braking zones because you're both cornering and decelerating. Is there anything you can do with the tire to make it multitask for both lateral and longitude at the same time? Because we were kind of talking about it being both individually, but you really needed to do both at the same time a lot of the times.
And that goes back to some of those pattern features that you wouldn't normally think contribute to that deflection under load, but those shoulder slots, they help evacuate water, but they also control that deflection so that when you have big load changes like that, the tire behaves in a specific, very predictable way. So it's super helpful for just helping to maintain that driver confidence in heavily loaded situations like that.
Woo! I love driving on big tracks.
Yeah, always fun. It never gets old.
Wait, you gotta tell me. How do they look?
Perfect, as always. How does mine look? All right, Tom, so we talked about tires. Most importantly, we got to drive the tires.
Yeah.
But now that we're not doing, I think I saw 110 going into 5. What'd you think?
I think the biggest impression is like the really long radius corners, just like 18 sinkhole going down 10 stories, up 10 stories, just kind of like clinging on for dear life. The car didn't really want to do it, but the tire allowed it. And that was kind of like my main impression, is just like that raw lateral grip that the car has because of the tire. You know, it was so apparent to me that that's basically the tire doing the work for the car. Everything else, I mean, the transitions up onto the front straight, the braking zones, everything felt great. I didn't really have any complaints other than now I want to make my car match the ability of the tire.
We get that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as a passenger, which I've heard that the passenger seat adds 20 miles an hour.
Yeah, you were doing 130.
It was very obvious, and especially I think the way that I like to do it is watch the driver's inputs, especially in something like the sinkhole where pretty constant radius, pretty low speed, so you can really kind of focus on what the driver's doing, just what you're doing with your hands, how balanced the car felt. That's probably my favorite corner on the whole track, is watching a driver balance on that edge of neutrality as the pavement drops away and you just kind of drop into the sinkhole and people get it right. It's just spectacular. Of course, you get. So we talked a little bit about the kind of the balance of the tires, kind of the stress that gets put on the tires going around. Let's take a look at the left front, which is really the most heavily loaded tire here at NCM, and just take a look and see what it looks like after a session.
I mean, the first thing I feel is just how tacky they are. I mean, I'm literally like sticking to the tire. And they've been cooling down for like 20 minutes at this point. So the other thing I noticed is you kind of see where the load of the tire, you'd expect the outside shoulder to get a lot of it, but you can even see throughout the middle of the tire, just going out from a fresh sticker, there's a lot of load still on this middle ribbing as well.
Yeah, and like I mentioned in the car, the contact patch looks a lot like a triangle. So you're gonna have most of the load out here, but the intermediate ribs are still doing a lot of the work. And part of what you see here is really just a function of the fact that it's still a street tire. It still has to have those grooves to be able to evacuate water. And so you wind up with a couple of narrower ribs in here, and naturally they aren't as stiff, so they can't distribute all of that load quite as well as like the stiffer outer block. But that really shows you you would expect a lot of wear or load out here. You're getting the load, it's just kind of handling it naturally just based on the design. So that's really the advantage of an asymmetric tread. And really this is exactly how you kind of want the tire to look like after a first session like that. Looks like your hot pressures are probably about where they need to be. So yeah, overall looks great.
Perfect. And a lot of these 200 tread wear tires or street tires, they like a little bit of a kind of break in and cure. Mm-hmm. So I know that the next time I drive this car, they're going to be even better because they're going to go cool down, they're going to cure a bit, and then the next time I go out,
yeah, they'll be pretty
so good. Yeah.
All right, Tom. So we talked tires, we've driven on tires, talked tires again. I happen to bring my car today, which is a virtual twin of yours.
Saw that.
I also brought my 71RSs.
Oh, okay. And I know I'm itching to drive more. You got to be itching after getting a little ride,
Oh yeah.
a little warmed up.
So pit party?
Let's do it. All right.